You on the Irish NFL show's NFC South off-season preview with the New Orleans Saints, a team, Kieran, that kind of disappointed last season. Probably would have expected a lot more of them. I know Brian's not here, so we can throw this one on Brian. He was very high on them last season. Thought that Derek Carr would slot right in here, that he had something to prove after the way things ended in Vegas with the Raiders, and that he'd come in here. He had enough weapons to make this an intriguing watch. Just didn't quite turn out that way. He looked frustrated, didn't seem to have the connection with Olave or the other, skill players that they have there. We know that the Saints are really living on the edge in terms of what they've done around their salary cap maneuvering, and they're in win now mode, whether they like it or not.
Well, there's a lot of right now modes in New Orleans. You got Dennis Allen's on the hot seat, and damn sure Derek Carr is going to be on the hot seat. Kind of similar to Tampa, they finished strong last season, but just ran out of gas. They just got pipped for the playoff spot. All eyes are going to be on Dennis Allen and how this team starts. They got the kind of pattern with the NFC East, basically, based on their overall cumulative poor performance, leads, the NFL to give them not the hardest of seasons, or not the hardest of schedules, I should say. And the Saints start off Carolina, Dallas, Eagles, Falcons, Chiefs, Tampa Bay. And if they can hit 3-3, maybe 2-4, that's going to be a good start for them. Then the other question, of course, is Mr. Carr. He's not the quarterback that inspires confidence in you. He's pouting, he's looking around, he's been sacked, and he's throwing a pick, and he's looking around, and he's not quite pointing fingers, but you can get the sense that he's looking around saying, somebody should have caught that ball.
We talked about this a lot last season, Karen. It's a good point, because I remember one particular highlight or low light that we reflected on several times, which is in one game. I can't remember which game it was. He massively overthrew Chris Olave, fires the ball way out of bounds, and then does the big "come on" at Olave, and Olave just looked completely bemused. Are you serious? That was a completely uncatchable ball. In no way, shape, or form is that anyone's fault but yours, mate.
Yeah, and the knock on Carr is that's his demeanor. All cameras are on him and all eyes are on him, and his demeanor doesn't quite show up the wide receivers, but it's not exactly engaging, and it's not exactly helping him when he goes back to sit in the bench and grabs his iPad, and when he goes over to talk to the wide receivers or the tight end and said, "Hey, that was kind of close to you," and they they're going to tell him to close his mouth to be polite. But yeah, it's a huge season for him too. I think his stats last year, just short of 4,000 yards, 25 TDs, 8 picks, not outstanding, probably run of the mill. You got to be hitting at least 4,000 yards in the NFL to be in with any kind of shot. Saints, again, kind of like Tampa, skirting of the 500 mark. They were just, they were, I think they finished 9-8 last year, just missed out. Probably looking at a similar kind of season. The schedule is, I don't want to say cupcake, because it's based on last year's strength of schedule. So there are a lot of tough teams in there. Eagles, I think they have the NFC East. I think the NFC South plays the NFC East. Decent draft. Got some nice picks. Fuaga, the tackle from Oregon State, that's going to help. That'll hopefully lessen Carr's antics on the sideline when he has an extra 0.2 seconds to throw the ball. Picking up Chase Young, Willie Gay on wide receiver. It all kind of points to Derek Carr, though. What's he going to do this year? What's he going to show out? The offense, other than Olave, it's not the strongest in the NFL, let alone the NFC South. Kamara is probably on the downslide now. He's taken his knocks over the years. St. Brown, he's probably a wide receiver 2 kind of caliber. And of course, Taysom Hill is still out there doing whatever they ask of him. Let's be honest. I don't think anybody from the NFC South is going to go deep in the playoffs. I think the Saints, their main goal is just let's stumble in. Let's see what we can do if we can get in there. Again, other players, Cam Jordan, he's on the downslide too. How many more years is he going to suit it up and have to go through all this for another, close shave season?
But yeah. The point, I guess, Shane, and this runs right through the NFC South, is that there's no way that the Saints are coming into this season thinking anything other than we can win this division and we can go to the playoffs, as every other team in the NFC South will think. And we'll get to the Falcons and people are kind of putting them on a pedestal as the team to beat. but it's not like they're monsters either. Like, they're kind of the tallest pygmy, and every other team in the division, the Saints included, will feel they have a shot.
I think the Saints have a really good shot this year, and I don't want to feel like I'm defending Brian when he's not here, but I think there were some good reasons to be hopeful with the Saints last year, and some of those do translate. I mean, Derek Carr, we know what he's capable of. I don't disagree with anything that Kieran has said. I think he really let himself down last season, but we know what is in there, what can be unlocked. And one thing I really think is interesting is the fact that this year they've made a change at offensive coordinator. They've brought in Clint Kubiak, who was the pass game coordinator in San Francisco. I mean, if there's any system that has shown how you can get the most out of a quarterback, that doesn't necessarily show the talent, that doesn't necessarily show leading leadership. That has been shown in San Francisco for the last couple of years with the Brock Purdy situation. Now, I know obviously a lot of that is down to Kyle Shanahan, but I mean, having him as an offensive coordinator, I think, is a potential game changer. Obviously, we still need to see the process or the product on the field. We need to see how Derek Carr mentality has changed. I would just wonder whether over the course of this offseason, he's really mentally put himself in the right position where he can get the rest of his offense to start singing in a better tune. And of course, we have to remember as well, as much as people talk down the Saints, they were 9-8 last year, the same as the Green Bay Packers, who everyone talks about in a brilliant game. Now, there are obviously different reasons as to why people are much higher on the Packers than they are on the Saints. But the Saints aren't exactly, they're not coming into this off a 7-10 season.
To your point, Shane, the turning point for the Packers last season probably was beating the Saints when Jordan Love led that big comeback. The Saints, there's a sliding doors moment there potentially where I think we're 17 points up on them, looked like they were going to put it to bed. The two teams could have headed in very different directions if that result had gone the way it looked like it was going.
Hugely different, because it would have put the Saints having to go to Dallas, I think, by the time that worked out. And we have to remember as well, the Saints won 4 of their last 5 games. Now, they lost against the LA Rams, which turned out to be crucial because the Rams ended up making the playoffs on the back of that victory. But the Saints aren't exactly coming in a hopeless situation. And even if we look more on the offensive side of the ball, I think there is a reason to think that Chris Olave, Shaheed, and A.T. Perry can work well as a solid offensive unit with Derek Carr, if they get the coaching right and if they get the planning right. We've seen in the NFL that when you don't have a top quarterback, there are 2 ways you can plan offensively. Either in a way which is completely lacking in imagination, that is hopelessly conservative in the hope that you just grind out first downs and have long drives, or you find a way to be intelligent and try to maximize what you have, even if that leaves you exposed for the following season, which I think, as we were talking about earlier, I think that's kind of what happened in Tampa Bay last year. They maximize what they have in a way that leaves them exposed for this season. I think the Saints had the potential to really maximize what they have this season in a way that isn't overly conservative, isn't without imagination like we saw with Atlanta, with Pittsburgh, and a few other teams last season, and in a way that I think can put them in the conversation for winning this division. We still have to see how Derek Carr...
Put them in the conversation. Nobody's out of the conversation for winning this division.
No, but you alluded to earlier, like, when people are talking about this division, it's almost as if it's the Falcons to win and the Buccaneers, because they won and they are coming off the playoff win. They're the ones that they're going to be chasing them. The Saints, I'm not quite sure people are really rating the Saints. I think there is a decent chance here because of the division they're in. You put this team in the NFC East or the NFC North, forget about it. But I think, again, in the division they're in, the only thing that goes against them is the fact that they have a difficult first half of the year. It'll take them a bit of time to gel. I mean, it from week 2 to 5, they had to play at Dallas, at home to Philadelphia, at Atlanta, and at Kansas City in Monday Night Football. A difficult run of games when you're trying to get a new offensive plan with a new offensive coordinator, a rookie offensive coordinator at that, to try and put things together. So in those games, it's up to the defense to prove that they are a team worthy of making the playoffs. But I don't know. And again, we said this last year, there are reasons to be hopeful that this team can top the division, particularly if Atlanta finds some way to mess up the situation they're in, which really isn't beyond the bounds of possibility.
No, one thing we haven't talked about is the coach and the Saints. Obviously, New Orleans at least hosts the Super Bowl. I don't think anybody's going to get carried away right here and say that New Orleans will be playing at home in that Super Bowl. But depending on how the season goes, Dennis Allen might be looking for a new home.
Yeah, I think Kieran mentioned it earlier on that Dennis Allen could be finding himself on the hot seat there this season. And I think, look, we look back last season and they got the 9 wins. We obviously look at the division they're in, but still we kind of contrasted it with the Packers. And, you know, 2 teams can have 9 wins, but they can look a bit different. And I don't know if the Saints look overly convincing. Obviously, a lot goes back to the quarterback, and that dictates how the team goes. But yeah, Dennis Allen, I don't know. Maybe it's coming in the shadow of Sean Payton, but it you know, he just feels like maybe. And I know it's hard. It's strange to say it, given 9 wins last year, but for me, something just doesn't feel right in this Saints team. I know Shane is talking about the optimism there. I'm one of the people that looks at this team and thinks it's maybe going to fall back a little bit. And I think the head coach is going to, you know, he's going to have to deal with that then. And I think it's probably something that he will. He's my favorite probably to lose his job is what I'm kind of saying. But who knows? We're early into the season. But yeah, I think Dennis Allen really needs to step up. He needs to hope that Kubiak can get that offense going, because defensive-wise, they look good. They could do with a bit of extra pressure up front, but they have a good defense that can keep them in games. But they just need to get this offense really, really clicking. And obviously, your quarterback is the main bit of that, so they need to get him up and going.